sharing with us. And again, we want to turn to Joshua, and we're going to read chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 1 through 9. And we're going to continue talking a little bit about Joshua and what it actually means to be brave. Okay? So I'm just going to read a portion of the scripture in Joshua 1, verses 1 through 9. And that says, "After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land that I am about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land that I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and be very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always in your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." And I know that we've read this scripture many times, but I kind of want to go back a little bit and talk about the reason why God was actually giving Joshua this word, why it was God's intention to reveal himself to him and tell him, be strong and be courageous. If we notice, he says it many times. And in the end, it sort of sounds weird when he says, have I not commanded you? It's sort of like a rhetorical question. Have I not said to you? Of course, he had said it several times before. But haven't I told you? And if I haven't told you, I'm going to tell you again. You need to be strong and you need to be courageous. And a lot of us tend to think that the reason why God was telling Moses to be strong and to be courageous was because what he was going to have to encounter on his way to conquer the promised land. We think that, because Joshua was going to have to confront his enemies and defeat his enemies in order to be able to go into the promised land, we assume that God is telling him, you know what, you need to be strong. You need to be brave. You need to be courageous. But if we look at what God tells him, we can see that in no way does God tell him, you're going to confront your enemies. You're going to have to defeat them. So we assume then that God is telling him to be courageous for a different reason. We can assume that it was because he had some big shoes he had to fill. He had to take his master's place. He had to, take the place of Moses, a great servant of God. Moses who had divided the Red Sea, who had taken out the Israelites from Egypt, who had been able to, with great courage, take his people into the desert and share the 10 Commandments, go into the mountain and receive God's word and come down and be very strong and was very strong and very courageous to deal with all of these people he had taken out of Egypt. So Joshua had some great shoes he had to fill. And so God is telling him, you need to be strong. You need to be very brave. Not because you're going to have to confront these enemies to conquer the land that I promised you, but you're going to have to conquer some things within yourself. You're going to have to conquer all of those feelings of feeling that you are not brave enough, that you're not able to do whatever I have called you to do. You have to conquer some things and some emotions within yourself to believe that what God has called you to do is exactly what you're going to be able to do. And in the end, everything is going to be okay. He had to feel courageous and be very brave and very courageous. And I don't know about you, but I've felt like that sometimes, where I have accepted a new position, where maybe I have made a big decision in my life, and then I'm second-guessing myself. What in the world have I gotten myself into? Why did I ever agree to do this? Why did I ever say I was going to do? What did I get myself into? What am I going to do now? We start second guessing ourselves and thinking that the decisions that we have made, this new position maybe that we accepted, maybe it's not really for us. Maybe it's not really something that I can do. And we start thinking that we're not able, that we're not qualified, that we're not meant to do this. But you know what? This is what I believe. I believe that if God has called you to do something, it's because he's going to make you able and make you capable of accomplishing everything that he has laid out for you in your life. But that's just human nature. We believe that we're not going to be able to do this. So God needs to reveal himself to us and tell us directly into our hearts, speak directly into our hearts and into our minds, and remind us that, you know what? You are brave. I make you brave. Trust in me, and you will be able to accomplish everything in your life that I have set out for you to do. So here we find Joshua second-guessing himself, thinking that he's not able, thinking that he's not capable, and God revealing himself to him and saying, you know what? You are, but you need to be brave. If you do all of these things that I have set out for you to do, if you follow my word, if you don't stray from my word, if you keep it in your heart, if you keep it in your lips, if you do all of these things that I have laid out for you, I promise I will give you everything that I promised Moses I would give him. And you will go into that promised land because I promised that you would. So, we find Moses receiving God's word, and God asking him not to be afraid, but to be courageous. Now let's try and see what really the definition of being or having courage or being brave would really mean. I kind of just looked it up on the internet and, found a definition that I think goes with what we are talking about this morning. If you look at the definition of what being courage or having courage, courage is the choice. I love this definition. Courage is the choice and willingness to confront agony, pain, danger, uncertainty, or intimidation. Physical courage is the bravery in place of physical pain, hardship, death, or threat of death, while moral courage is the ability to act rightly in the face of popular opposition, shame, scandal, discouragement, or personal loss. That is big. Because you don't not only need to have physical courage, but you need to have moral courage. And the courage to stand up for what is right, which in this time, in the time that we're living in, we need a lot of moral courage. In the society that we're living in, we need bravery. We need people who are able to confront their battles, who are able to be themselves, who think differently, and who stand up for what they believe, which is a lot of what we lack in our society now. Because ever since kids are young, and I see that I teach kindergarten, and I see that ever since kids are young, their parents inflict fear. If you don't go to bed, the monster's going to get you. El cucuy. Right? That's how we say it in Spanish. If you don't go to bed, the monster's going to get you. If you don't eat your food, you're not going to be healthy. Your teeth are going to fall out if you eat too much candy. We tell them, if you misbehave, you're going to get a spanking. If you wear a jacket and you go outside, you're going to get sick. If you don't study, you're not going to pass. And if you don't pass, you're not going to graduate. And if you don't graduate, you're not going to go to college. And if you do go to college and you're not on time to work, then you're going to lose your job. And if you lose your job, then you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your car, you're going to lose your family. So we are taught to be constantly afraid of everything. And even since we were small, we've been taught to be afraid. And that is the way that we grow up to be as adults, to be afraid of taking a step forward, of moving forward, of being ourselves, of thinking differently, of standing up for the things that we believe. We are constantly afraid of the unknown because it is unknown. because we don't know what's going to happen next. And we live in fear of not knowing what's going to happen. But that's the greatness of God. He knows what's going to happen. He knows the unknown. And all he calls us out to do is just be brave. Just be strong enough to take the next step in your life and trust in me that I know things are going to be okay. Whether or not they go the way you planned them, whether or not they go the way that you thought they were going to go, doesn't matter. What matters is that whatever happens in your life and whatever you go through in your life, God is going to be there. All you have to do is be brave and be courageous and take the next step. We constantly live in fear of the things that we are about to encounter. We don't do a lot of things in our lives because we fear. We don't maybe accept a lot of positions because we're scared. We think we're not going to be able to do it. Or we may not make a decision within our family or within our finances because we're scared of what might happen. And that happens to me a lot. I'm very cautious. I don't like to do things that are out of my comfort zone. I do not like them. I like things to go the way I set them out or the way I thought they should go. And I married someone who is completely the opposite. Let's do this right now. And I'm like, wait a minute. Take a step back. We got to plan this out. We got to think about what we're going to do. Do we have the money? Do we have, everything we need to just hold on a little bit. I don't like to deal with lots of change and stepping out of my comfort zone because I like this feeling of security and being able to know that the things that I do are going to go exactly the way that I planned them. But I figured out pretty quick it doesn't always work that way. And it's very hard when you're taken out of that comfort and put into a position where you don't know what's going to happen. With nothing that you laid out is happening. What do? And I had to learn, you have to trust God. There's just no other way. There's no other way that you're going to be able to get through it but by trusting God. Because when you go and take a step forward, and you encounter what's the unknown, you just really have to trust in him and know that he is going to be with you. Whatever difficulties you may encounter don't matter. What matters is that God is with you. And that is what God was telling Joshua. You need to be brave. Because guess what? You're going to have to fill in some big shoes, but that's okay. I'm going to be with you. And that is what we need now in our society. So we grow up to be scared, and then we, as adults, we drag that into our adulthood. I remember the student that I have, very smart little girl this year, just little diva. And but I remember one time she came to me, and it's been a couple of times since then. She's come to me and she said, Miss Moya. And she asked me about something about Halloween. She said, at Halloween, the devils, is that satanic? And I'm like, okay, who told you that? My mom. My mom says, that's the devil. And I said, well, I wasn't going to feed into the whole, scary devil. And I said, well, it's a holiday. Kids go out, they dress up and they ask, for candy, and they go door to door. Well, my mom says that's the devil. And several other times she's come and asked me certain things. Is that the devil? And I kind of have to guide her, into thinking that not everything, is scary. And not everything is the devil. But you know what? That is what her mom teaches her, to be scared. Trying to manipulate her, to keep her scared so that she will do what her mom tells her to do. And that's kind of the way society works. It's kind of like a lethal weapon. They want to keep you scared so that way you stay where you are. You don't do anything with your life. You don't accomplish it because you're too scared to move on. You're too scared to move and take that step forward. It is a lethal weapon that we have in our society to keep you scared. fear. And it's really sad. People who have potential, people who have the skills and who have the ability, who have all of the things they need to be and accomplish great things in their life, are held back because they're too scared. You know how people get into the end of their life and regret the things that they never did? Gosh, if I had the time, if I could go back in time, I would do this differently. If I could turn back time, I would make this decision. I would do this over again. And they live their lives regretting the things that they didn't do because they were too scared to do it. But you know what? There has to come some point in your life where you just get fed up, where you get tired of living the way that you're living, too scared to move forward and too scared to take chances in your life, and you never accomplish anything. I like to tell stories about my kids. And this week, I have these two girls who are mean, very mean. If they grow up and they don't change, they could actually be the main characters in that movie, Mean Girls. They are mean. Mean. They bother the other kids. They make fun of them. They push them. They hit them. I mean, they're just mean. And they're 5. But they're mean. They're so mean. And I've called them out in front of the kids many times, because I want the kids to know that their behavior is unacceptable. And I tell the kids, if someone does something to you, you need to defend yourself. You need to, and I don't tell them to hit or anything, but I tell them, you need to speak up. If someone does something to you, you don't let them intimidate you. You say something. You tell them to stop or tell them to leave you alone. But of course, my kids don't do that. Because they've been told at home that if someone does something to you, you don't do anything, you go and you tell your teacher. So they come and they tell me. And then I tell them, what are you going to do when I'm not there? Who are you going to tell? So you need to do something for yourself. Obviously, they never do. This week, these girls are tall, right? They're tall for 5. And I have my short little boy. And I was talking to him. We were just having a private conversation that he had an issue with another little girl. And I was asking him, are you telling me the truth? He's very honest and he's very good. And he says, yeah, Miss Moya, I'm telling you the truth. And I said, okay, that's perfect. I believe you. Here comes this mean girl. Well, every time he is talking to me, I tell him he needs to tell me the truth. And I ask him every time if, the conversation we were having. And that little boy turned around and he was so angry, so mad. He said, "You're not my mother." The little girl got startled. And I said, well, that's that. He says you're not his mother, so there you go. She got so embarrassed. She put her head down. She walked away. And then all the other kids started swarming around that little boy, starting to hug him. Kind of like, telling him, we're with you. We have your back. And that little girl just put her head down and walked away. Never bothered him since. Short little boy. But it came a time where he just was fed up. And maybe the only thing he could say was, "You're not my mother." But that was his way of defending himself and saying, you know what, I'm not going to let you treat me this way anymore. I'm not going to let you say the things about me that you've been saying, hurt me or talk bad about me or try to boss me around. I am fed up. You are not going to do this anymore to me. He was fed up. He was tired of it. And there needs to come a point in our lives where we get tired and we get fed up of how we're living, of letting fear guide us, letting fear penetrate our mind so much so that we're too scared to do anything in our lives. We need to be brave and we need to have courage. Because in the world that we're living in right now, it takes good people to have courage and to stand up for what is right. We live in a society where people are told and dictated to follow a certain pattern, where you're not allowed to be who you are. because who you are is not good enough. They tell you how to dress. They tell you how to act. They tell you who to be, who your friends are going to be, the way that you should behave, even, what's a good school. I hate going shopping because every time I go shopping for clothes, there's this, model, these types of pants, and I want something that I like. No, but that's what's in, right? So you have to buy what's in. But what if I don't like what's in? Well, that's all there is, right? So you have to go and you have to think about all of these things that in our society, you are dictated who you need to be. And sometimes we're not allowed to be us. And it takes a lot of courage to be who you are, who you truly are. To express what's really in your heart and to express who you truly are, that you are a son and a child of God, that you are different, that your life is different, that the way that God has laid out your life is completely different, that you stand out and not be the same and not follow the pattern of this world and this society, especially for young people who are constantly, go through that peer pressure of who you have to be. You have to be who God wants you to be, not who someone else believes you should be. You need to be what God has laid out for you to be. And sometimes the most difficult thing is just that, just being who you are. Because we want to fit in. We want to be like everyone else. We want to be accepted by our peers and by our family. And so we follow others without necessarily following our heart and what God has laid out for our lives. So how do you be able to overcome not being brave? Or how do you get the courage to be brave? Here are a couple of things that I guess we could do in our lives to overcome that. Number one, you have to admit to yourself that you are scared and that maybe you're not that brave. You have to acknowledge to yourself that something is holding you back and you need to overcome it. And we have a lot of those. There are certain things in your life that hold you back. Whatever it is, your emotions, whatever it is in your life that is holding you back, you have to acknowledge what that is, confront it, and overcome it. And that's the only way you're going to gather the courage to move on, to confront the things in your life that are holding you back. You have to believe in God, and you have to trust in who He is. That's the most difficult and yet the easiest thing in our lives. Putting your dreams at the feet of the Creator. Putting your life in His hands and knowing that everything in your life, that He is holding your life and everything He has laid out for you will come to pass. The most amazing thing is that He is our Creator and He knows us best. Who better to hold our lives than Him when He knows everything in our lives, every part of our lives, He knows it. So who better to guide us? Number 3, we need to grow in character, which will allow us to discover our talents, our gifts, and our abilities. And this will give you the confidence in yourself and help with your insecurities that are produced by fear and the unknown. And like I mentioned before, the biggest challenge is taking the first step. But when you do, you'll be able to discover all of the good qualities in your life, those abilities, those gifts that God has laid in your life, or has put upon in your life. And when you start to discover all of the things that you are able to do, that creates self-confidence. That creates in you a heart that says, I can do this. I really can do this. I'm not so bad at this. I think I can make it. Because you start to discover those qualities and the things that make you, you. And when you start to develop those things in your life, you begin to notice that, wow, I'm different. I can do it. I actually can. There's one thing that I've always wanted to do in my life, and I never got the courage to do it until now. You know what? There comes a certain age, and I think I've come to that age where it's like, you just don't care anymore about certain things, you know? It's just like, God, I am 36. And I've lived, you know, being scared of certain things, of doing certain things. And it comes to a point in your life when you say, you know what? I just don't care anymore. I'm just going to do it. And one thing I've always wanted to do, and I just never did, was taking just, for me, cake decorating classes. It's just, it's kind of like, it's dumb, it's silly, but something that I've always wanted to do that I just never had the courage to do, because I thought, what if I can't do it? What if I mess up? What if I'm not really good at this? Well, maybe you're not going to know if you're really good at it unless you try it first, right? So I had the opportunity, and I took the classes. I took the beginning classes, and you know what? I discovered that I'm actually pretty good. I'm actually pretty good. But you're never going to know the things that you can do unless you actually try to do them or take the first step. And when you start to learn, wow, I'm actually good at this, it motivates you. And it gives you the confidence to actually continue to do and explore more other things in your life. Because you know what? I can do it. Number 4, you need to identify the root of the problem. What has caused you to act in fear? What things in your life have caused you to be so fearful? Maybe it was a traumatic moment. Maybe it was someone who was constantly repeating, you know what, you can't do this, you're going to fail. I don't think you're good at that. You need to try something else. Maybe someone, instead of being encouraging, was actually inflicting fear. So you need to think about and explore and look and really, look into your heart and see what is the root of the problem. What has caused you to be so afraid? I've been through a lot of things in my life, and I think that's why I'm so like this. Like I can't see, like my thing is black or white. Like I can't see in the middle. And I've been through a lot of things in my life. And I've discovered that a lot of those things have caused me to be scared. My dad died when I was 10. We had to move, from where we lived to another state where I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends. Then I started to gain weight. And then just a lot of things that were happening in my life that I just never realized, you know what? I think that's why I'm so scared. I grew up in a church where everything was bad. Everything you did was bad, and you were going to go to hell for everything. You can't do this. Couldn't pierce our ears. Couldn't go to the movie theater. Couldn't wear pants. It was so legalistic, and everything you did, if God came that day, you were going to go to hell. And I always lived in this fear of like, oh, I can't do this because, I'm going to go to hell. And I can't do this, I can't do that, and just a lot of rules. And I discovered when I came to this church what it actually means to be free in God. So liberating. I don't have to hide who I am. I feel like I can be me. I don't have to be afraid of I made a mistake. I don't have to be afraid of, I took a misstep, but that's okay. Because God is always going to be your Father no matter what you do. And it was so liberating when I came to the church and I realized that, not everything is about hell. It doesn't matter what you've done or what you will do. What matters is that God is a forgiving God. And He loves you just the way you are. So you need to figure out what the root of your problem is. Because once you find it, once you realize what it is, and you begin to overcome it, it becomes liberating. You become free because you don't have anything that is tying you down, that is keeping you from your dreams and from your accomplishments. You're able to overcome it. It's so liberating. What is the root of your problem? What is making you so afraid of not being able to accomplish all of the goals that you've set out in your life? You need to visualize your life without fear. You need to think about, where would I be if I wasn't so afraid? Who would I be if I wasn't so scared and so afraid? Sometimes all it takes is for us to visualize who we would be if we didn't have this obstacle in our lives. Could you think about where you would be now if you weren't so scared of taking that step? Can you see yourself maybe in a certain position at work? Maybe, I don't know what your dreams are, what your goals are. Can you see yourself living your life without fear and accomplishing all of the things that you've laid out in your life? Can you see yourself like that? Can you visualize yourself? What would you be and who would you be? Number 6, you begin to overcome your fears. You take the first step into being free, and you start living again. You have to overcome them. Because when you hold back, it's so hard when you know you want to do something, but you're too scared to do it. And you're always thinking, if I could do that, if I know I could do that, but I'm too scared to take a step forward. But when you start to overcome all of your fears and you start seeing what God's word can do in your life, and you are encouraged and you begin to take bravery in your life, or you begin to become brave, you start living again. You start living again. Because you've overcome those things that are holding you back. You're no longer tied down. You're free. That is very liberating. Number 7, you should fear only one thing. This is the only thing you should ever fear. Staying in the same place you are now. Being the same person you are now. Our life is meant to evolve. We go through a lot of changes in our lives. And sometimes those changes are really hard to get through, because sometimes we're forced to go through changes in our life to mature. And sometimes those are really hard. But the only thing you should fear is staying in the same place. Because you're going to look back 20 years from now, and if you're still the same person, you're still in the same place, that is scary. Our life is meant to evolve. Our life is meant to go through these types of changes where we need to learn and mature. And if you make a mistake, you learn from it and you don't make it again. You know, humans are the only creature that can trip over the same stone more than once. Because we don't learn from our mistakes. We keep making them, expecting the results to be different. We keep doing the same things over and over again, thinking this time it'll be different, and it never is. And we keep tripping over the same stone. But we need to evolve. We need to change. We need to think differently. We need to walk differently. We need to talk differently, because you can't stay in the same place for the rest of your life. You need to move forward. You need to overcome your fears. And you need to let God guide your life. I love this quote that Nelson Mandela said. He said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. That's who's brave. It takes a lot of courage to conquer your fears, because not everyone is willing or able to do that. A lot of people prefer just to stay the way they are, because it's easier that way. Just to stay in the same spot, in the same place. Just stay where you are. That's easier than conquering your fears, than conquering those things that are holding you back. So I ask you this morning, what is holding you back? What's keeping you from accomplishing the things that God has laid out for your life? You know, it's never too late. It's never too late. You know, in Spanish, we say that as long as you're living, there's still hope. As long as you're alive, there's still hope. Nothing is ever lost. It's lost when you're dead and you can't do anything to change it. But when you're still alive, there's still something more you can do. There's still some other thing in your life you can explore. There's still more goals to accomplish, still more dreams to conquer. Nothing is ever lost, and it is never too late. So don't give up. Keep bravery in your heart. Be encouraged. And know that whatever in your life happens, there is maybe nothing you can do to change it. Maybe there's nothing you can do to change your situation, your circumstance, your issues, but there's certainly something that I can do to change myself. Because it's not necessarily the problem that's the problem. It's us that's the problem. And how you look at your problems and how you overcome them. Because sometimes we go through issues in our lives or situations or problems or what have you, or you name it, you call it whatever it is in your life. And we look at our situations and our problem with such negativity. We're so fed up, we're tired, and yeah, it might be something that we've been through before, and just we look at it with such negativity. But you know what? Until you learn to look at your life different, until you learn to look at your situations differently, then that is the moment in your life when you're able to mature and you're able to see your life in a different way, in a different perspective. So don't let things hold you back. You always have to keep moving forward.